Welcome to the Tarot Tapestry, a weaving of self-discovery, where three tarot mavens put their heads and hearts together to offer their wisdom and insights about the tarot. We hope that you find this helpful in your personal journey to self-discovery and growth.
Join us as we explore ways to use tarot for self-reflection and self-correction.
Together, we'll discover new ways to use tarot to weave threads of understanding into the tapestry of your life. Welcome back to another episode of the Tarot Tapestry. Today, I am joined again by my two co-hosts, Angie and Linda. And today we'll be discussing the 4's and 5's of the Minor Arcana. And I was thinking today, before we begin diving into the 4's and the 5's, that we could talk a little bit about the difference between the Major Arcana and the Minor Arcana of the tarot deck. Just for our listeners to know, the Major Arcana consists of the cards that are numbered from 0 to 21, and the Minor Arcana consists of the cards from 1 to 10, as well as the court cards, which are the pages, the knights, the queens, and the kings.
So did anybody want to start us off?
Yeah, I'll go. I've always heard, and I think it holds true when you look at the cards, that the Major Arcana is kind of the story of a person's life journey, from maybe youth through, I wouldn't say infancy, but youth through maybe full maturity, completion of a cycle, and then it kind of starts over, because the World card is the person, kind of in traditional imagery, they're stepping through this portal. And so it is like a spiral that spirals up and up and up. It's not a flat, it's not linear, because we all know that we go through similar things in our lives to teach us, until we learn what we're supposed to learn from it. And then a lot of times it doesn't happen anymore, or we can recognize when it's beginning to happen and say, oh no, I'm not going to go down that path again. And so you can catch yourself. The Minor Arcana, which, for people that come to see me for readings, I kind of explain as like a regular deck of playing cards, is for the things that happen in your life, on a kind of a day-to-day basis. Which doesn't mean that, a Minor Arcana card couldn't tell you about some big upheaval in your life. That's absolutely possible. And if you get a Major Arcana in a certain spread, it doesn't have to mean that. It can mean something else. But generally, that's how they differentiate between the two. The one set of, the 22 cards is kind of like the big life-changing events, things that come with the Tower or the Chariot or something like that. And the other ones are more like what happens in everyday life. I'm worried about my job. I'm worried about my relationship. I need clarity on, how to deal with my teenager. All that kind of stuff that you just face on a day-to-day basis. That's how I kind of get it.
Very well said, Linda. Thank you so much. I did just want to throw in there the word arcana or arcana. Some people will pronounce it differently. And it's like secrets or mysteries, and I loved hearing that, like secrets and mysteries, and how, living our life on a daily basis is like a mystery in itself. Like you wake up every day and you're like, okay, I'm going to start my day and I'm going to do my things, but it's sort of like a mystery how your day is going to unfold, and how our daily lives and how what we do, what we say, what we see, they are like the secrets that we hold inside of us that come out, and I like to, think about those secrets sort of as they can be considered like our shadows, right? The things that we kind of hold inside that we don't really want to share with the world, but they do come out. We may not notice them. And the cards can kind of help us reveal those secrets so that, we can, so that we can continue going down this road of self-growth and self-discovery in a way that's going to lead us to our true self. I just needed to add that little bit in there. I just love secrets and mysteries. It's just so mystical.
I love that. Yeah, I don't think I have a whole lot to add to anything that you guys said. I agree with everything. The only thing that I think I could add is maybe when I do a reading, the major arcana are more like sometimes like yeah, the big things like okay, we're talking about the 4's and the 5's today. So the emperor is about authority and stability and all of that stuff, those really big things. And then when you go into the minor arcana, it's kind of like, okay, this is how you um build it or find it or keep it or don't or in like yeah, like on the day-to-day thing. The arcana is more like uh the the architecture, I guess, that everything hangs on. So
Yeah, I like that. And then also too with the majors, those cards are also archetypes, right? Like you were talking about the emperor being an archetype. And then last week we did the Hierophant, which is an archetype also of authority, but different than the emperor. So it's quite fascinating. But yeah, so I guess enough about that, and let's dig right in to the numbers 4 and 5. And I thought that we could start with maybe doing the number 4. And I was just going to give like a few words to kind of describe the overall what the 4s symbolize. And what I came up with was stability, structure, and the foundation. I really love that word, foundation. Did any of you guys want to add any other descriptive words to that?
yeah, I think it's stability. The 4's, and the wands, it's party, and it's kind of like they're celebrating achieving something. Like maybe it's the harvest, it could be a wedding or something, but it's, we've come together. This is what we put together, and this is, the baseline that we want. And in the cups too, there's not a lot of action. There's somebody who feels, I think, the man or the person sitting under the tree there staring at the 3 cups, and then this little popcorn hand comes out with, hey, check this out. It's more about making considered decisions about whether you're ready to take more on at the moment. So you've reached a place of stability and status quo, maybe emotionally, and now you can decide if you're ready to take on more. And in the swords, you're kind of having a rest there. It's time to be still. And with the 4 of Pentacles, it's, this is my foundation, like you were saying. This is my stuff. These are the things that I have to work with. So
yeah, I like that. Linda, did you want to share?
Yeah, so recently I've been comparing I'm using just the straight Rider-Waite Smith deck. I kind of have decided to do that for the podcast, but I'm also comparing it sort of to the Toth deck because I just find the artwork and the keywords that they use for each minor arcana card. They use them for the 1 through 10. They don't use them for the court cards. But each card 1 through 10 has a keyword, and I've got them sitting together and looking at them, and it's really interesting because I think the 4, for instance, for me historically, the 4 of Pentacles has been about kind of almost like hoarding, like keeping, gathering everything, keeping your stuff with you and just keeping a hold of it and not letting anybody else in, not sharing things, just because the image in the card is a guy sitting on a bench or a seat, and he's got his feet on 2 pinnacles. He's got a pinnacle on his head, and he's holding onto a pinnacle. So he's kind of like got these things pinned down, fixed with him so that nobody's going to take his stuff away. And that's kind of the vibe that I historically had gotten that. But then when we did the workshop, I mean, Angie, you weren't there, but when we did the workshop in the symposium Sunday, Claudine said she thought of this card as protecting her peace, like protecting her mental health. And I thought it was very interesting. And the Thoth deck calls it, the key word for it is power. And the image is looking like an aerial view of a castle. So you see the 4 towers and the connecting parapets, I guess you call, in the moat, and then the gate in and the central area. And so, you know, if you were in a castle during that time of the world, you know, you had power because you could close the gate, you could keep people out, you could, you know, you could have your resources in there, your subjects or whoever, if they were in there, they could withstand a siege, they had food, they had water, you know, and so they had power to survive a battle or a war. And so that gives me just a whole other direction to go off with this card, that it's not about it's not necessarily about hoarding your stuff. It's about where do you find your power and what do you do with it, you know, when you have it. So I thought that was really interesting.
Oh, I like that very much, that idea of power. And as you were talking about power, I started to think about one of the words that I have for the 4 of Pentacles, and it's control. You know, and I do see how power and control can go along with one another, you know, kind of like pairing them up together. And it's that idea of controlling something, right? For your, you know, security, stability, like I am controlling my finances as far as where I might invest and how much I spend, right? Or controlling, you know, maybe on the way opposite end of I'm controlling so much that I'm not allowing myself to move forward. Like I'm afraid, right? Because when you have so much control over something, you know, deep down inside, you fear losing something, right? And I know that, you know, control is can be a huge problem for people, letting go of control. Like I know for myself, I was a control freak. I had to have everything in control. And if I didn't have it in control, I felt my life was falling apart and I couldn't manage things. So I'm sorry to interrupt you, Linda, but it just made me think of control.
And there's a book that when I was working as a paralegal, one of the lawyers gave it to me because we got into this discussion, kind of, I don't know, off the wall discussion, and he brought me this book, and it's called Power versus Force. And I can't remember who wrote it, but it's still available. It's an interesting cover. The cover is just black and white. It's a diagonal slash, you know, so there's a white diagonal half and a black diagonal half. And it talks about, you know, I think that power, people having power, has gotten a bad rap because too many times it's confused with force. You know, we're going to make you do something, or we're going to, you know, invade this country because we have power. Well, you may not have power, but you have a lot of force. And power is what allows you to stand in your own life and say, I'm not going to let popular opinion, popular culture, peer pressure, whatever, push me into a way of being that I don't feel is right for me. And that's what power is when you can be who you are in spite of all these other things outside trying their best to make you be something else.
Yeah, and that's what makes a good leader, you know, versus maybe more of a dictator, you know, like a leader, you know, versus a dictator is power. I see Angie, did you want to say something more about it?
I've always liked the 4 of Pentacles as okay, I have all of my resources. I know where everything is, and now I need to decide how I'm going to use it. So it's kind of um, it's always been kind of a planning card for me. Like, I think of it coming after the Three of Pentacles, where there's everyone and they're working together to build something. I think of this as like, yay, they paid the contract. And now what do I do? You know, of course, if it's, depending on the question and the cards surrounding it, can also be like you were saying, I'm really scared to even move a tiny inch in any direction. But usually it's stillness with your resources, but like the reason for that is all in your head. Like, are you afraid, or are you being cautious and planning carefully? Because you understand that this is you're gonna have to go make more. So
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. That was really good.
All right, Linda, do you want to talk about any of the other cards?
Yeah, I'll
The 4's?
go briefly through the other 4's just on the Toth keyword. I gotta keep thinking that keyword. So the 4 of Wands that you talked about with the, people celebrating, and they have their banner, the little garland in the wands that are planted in the earth. For the Toth deck, keyword is completion. And I think that makes a lot of sense because, and again, I'm thinking it's like a community. This is like a community completion, a community kind of a thing for me. Like the Three of Cups is a celebration of, you're with your good friends and you're celebrating good times and that kind of thing, but that's more of a personal celebration. And I look at the Four of Wands as more like a community celebration where you're all coming together. Maybe it's a harvest thing, or, you had said a wedding, but it could be, any kind of celebration. And then we're done, we're finished, and that's a good word for that completion. For the Four of Swords, the word is truce, which is really interesting, because obviously in the Rider-Waite deck, the knight is asleep on, it looks like a tomb, that kind of thing, but he's resting on that with the sword underneath him and 3 swords hanging on the wall. In the Toth deck, it's a flower or a mandala in the center, and from diagonal directions, the swords are all pointing. Their points have come together, so their points are touching in the middle. So it's like somebody laid down their swords in this kind of fashion, and so it's like they've said, okay, well, we'll put our swords down and take a rest, and then maybe we'll come back and talk about things or fight some more. Who knows? But for now, we're gonna take a break. And then the Four of Cups, which is interesting. I never got this before. It's luxury. And I've always looked at the guy, kind of sitting at the tree. Either he was resting because he was maybe overwhelmed, or he was pouting because he didn't get what he wanted. And then the hand out of nowhere is handing him this other cup. But now I'm thinking maybe he's just got everything that he wanted, but now he's even getting more, which is luxury, so maybe he's sitting there looking at those cups thinking, well, this is great. I've got everything. I'm just going to rest here for a while. And here comes, the lady of the lake or the lady of the popcorn handing him a cup and saying, no, here, have some more. So it just got me thinking in a different direction, which is always interesting, always great for me.
definitely.
That's fascinating to look at that way, because when you first said it, I'm like, what? Like I couldn't immediately make the connection.
Yeah.
But as you just described it, I'm like, oh yeah. Like I can totally understand that.
Yeah. And the Toth illustration is 4 cups kind of sitting under this fountain, and the fountain is just filling them up and filling them up and filling them up, and they're overflowing. So yeah, no shortages there.
Yeah, it's a luxury to be able to take it or leave it, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the words that came up for the Four of Cups for me was contemplation too. And just this idea of like needing to reassess like what's going on with yourself right now, and probably more so in an emotional at an emotional level, right? Like what is going on for me right now? And sometimes you do need that opportunity to kind of, and in my deck, which is the Good Fortune Tarot, it's very similar to the Rider-Waite, where there is a person that's sitting by a tree trunk, 3 cups in front of them, one is being offered to them, and they're not looking. But it's not necessarily that they're not looking at it to say, oh, I'm ignoring you, but it's more like I've got these full cups in front of me, and right now there's a lot of things going on, and I just need to take some time to reassess what is going on in my life right now. How am I feeling? How are these emotions, affecting my actions and things that I'm doing? And I just kind of need some time to just not be bothered with everything else that's going around me. I just need that time for myself, which also kind of reminds me of the 4 of Swords, with the idea of contemplation as well, but it's more about mental clarity, right? It's this idea of I need to make sure that I'm resting, that I'm relaxing my mind so that I can start making decisions more clearly. So the cups is more about our emotional state, and then the swords is more about our mental clarity and how we think about things and purposefully taking that break. And then the deck that I have, I really love the way that they show the 4 of Swords, because it's a person lying down, and he has what looks like a halo. It's just like this round light that goes around his head, and the swords are pointing towards him, and then he's got a big heart on his chest, and he just has his hand on his heart, and he's got like this very peaceful look on his face, and it's just kind of like, yeah, I'm taking a break right now, and I'm clearing my mind. Like I truly need this, and this is the best thing for me. Almost like he even looks like he's in a meditative, state of mind.
Yeah.
So that's what I had thought about the 4 of Cups and the 4 of Swords. And the 4 of Wands. I always had a hard time with the 4 of Wands. I'm not really sure why. But as I was doing some research, the whole aspect of community and achieving a sense of belonging with a group of people. And it is different than the 3 of Cups. I think of the 3 of Cups more as, and I mentioned this before in another episode, that it's like your tribe, right? You're that tight-knit group, and that's your tribe. But I see with the 4 of Wands, when it comes time to like a community, it's more like a larger group of people that you have a good connection with. Then it's like, like I have found a community of people that I really feel this sense of belonging to, and that we share some of the same values or beliefs or traditions or rituals. And that can be, your paternal family, or that can just be like friends and other kind of things. But it's like, and then you have built like a foundation with this community that just kind of like holds you upright, and that this group of people are there to help and support you, and you have that feeling of of security, right? Like, you know what? I feel safe. I feel safe with these
Yeah.
people. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, I love that comparison with the 3 of Cups for that card, because it is, like you said, those are your besties. And then in the 4 of Wands, it's more like this is the whole village, or the,
Yeah.
office, or
Village about where, for raising the child.
Yeah. Yeah, like that, and all those celebrations, the weddings and the family gatherings, and that's what kind of what I think about when I look at the card that I have. It's like these, 2 young girls, and they're, starting to walk underneath it's a trestle, right? Is that what it's called? A trestle? Yep, a canopy. That's what it is. And they have their white dresses on, and they have these little things in their heads, and it reminds me of like a celebration. And one of the girls is turned around, and it's almost like she's got this look on her face like, hey, come and join us. Come and join us for the celebration. We're going to make you feel warm and welcome. Just come along. Everything is going to be great, and it's such a beautiful, warm feeling for it. Okay, so shall we go to the 5's? Did anybody
heck
want to say
yeah.
anything more?
Let's go to 5's, because we go from power, completion, truth, and luxury to worry, strife, defeat, and disappointment. How about that?
Woo, what a change.
Yeah, I like the 5's because it's like where stuff starts moving again. Stuff has happened. And now, things are like in the wands. Everyone who was at the party is now drunk and waving sticks at each other, in the traditional deck. It's, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people. They've all each got a wand, and they seem to be kind of swinging them around. You can't really tell if they're fighting or if they're trying to build something. Are they arguing about how to put the tent up? What's going on there? And it kind of in the wands, it's teaching you, I think, how to be patient and wait your turn or not when you're excited about something, because we talk about the wands as the fire element and creativity, and so you can often get a little bit, just accidentally be too aggressive when when it comes to things like that. And then in the 5 of Cups, that's kind of a sad card. It shows the person standing, kind of downtrodden. They've got 5 cups. 3 of them are spilled over on their sides. The potion or the wine or whatever was in it is spilled all over, sunk into the ground. And their house is, yonder. You can see it across a bridge. And this is more about grief to me than the 3 of Swords even is.
Oh,
The
wow.
3 of Swords is about suffering, but I feel like the 5 of Cups is really about grief. You cannot stop thinking about the losses that you've incurred. And being Cups, it's very emotional, and they're standing next to a river which is flowing, but they're kind of far away from it. You have to cross the bridge. You have to cross the running water to get past your grief. And I've always found this imagery in the traditional RWS deck very, I just think it's a very good depiction of what it feels like to be stuck in grief.
Yeah.
You have to go, there's other things to live for, but you can't right now. And the 5 of Swords, I think, can teach you, it's the lesson in that is how to be a good winner, not to be a sore, mean, braggadocious kind of winner. I think it's great to feel victorious when you're in any kind of a battle or a contest. It's really good, but you just, and trash talk is a thing, and a lot of people just, can give it back and forth, and it's really fun. But in this card, it looks like, the person who's there picking up the sword is kind of like, haha, maybe they didn't cheat, but maybe they went a little harder than they had to do and actually really hurt somebody instead of just, winning. The power versus force thing, I think,
Yeah.
applies here too. And it's the way the clouds are, and it looks like kind of a windy day, so you can just kind of get carried away on your own wind, right? I know I can, if I'm in a verbal argument with someone, I have to be very careful with what I say, because I can be really, really freaking mean sometimes, and that's not always warranted. And it
Well,
doesn't matter that it's a defense mechanism, or the reasons that you hurt someone that way don't so much matter, and they shouldn't matter to the person who's hurt.
right. Well, and what I find interesting is that in the Thoth deck, that this is called defeat.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like victory because he's the one that's got all the swords and the other people are walking away from him. But I think with this card, you have to, it's almost like a pick your battles kind of a thing. Because if you go hard on this one battle, you might win the battle, but you're going to lose the war. And I think you have to keep, when it's you know, I kind of kept that in mind raising teenagers. It's like, well, am I going to fight about this thing that probably in 3 weeks is not, we're not either one of us going to remember it unless I make it so much of an issue that it, you know, destroys something between us? Or am I just going to try to let it go as much as I can, as long as nobody's in real danger and, you know, nothing bad is going to happen? So you have to just, I think, really decide when you're gonna, you know, like you said, engage those words or whatever. Sometimes you might need to. Sometimes you might need to protect yourself or to just make people understand that you're not going to be pushed over or whatever, and you might have to engage those words. But, you know, I think it's a matter of being aware of where a discussion or a disagreement might go, you know, and kind of being careful not to push it to the end if you don't want to lose a friend or, you know, a relationship or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. It's kind of like, okay, I won, but what did I lose by winning? Here,
Exactly.
what did I end by winning? Like maybe one of those people who's walking away hurt right now was gonna like recommend you for a job at the factory their dad owns, or you know, but now they're like, ew, I don't want to work with that person. They're mean. You know, they
Well,
can't just go, ha, I won, yay, let's all go, you know, get some pizza now. Or, you know, it's the kind of winning where you're like, I got the last word and I know that they're gonna go home and they're gonna stew on this, you know.
I'm always right.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And then in the Five of Pentacles, I think this is a card that shows us to try not to don't stay in your suffering longer than you have to. You know, these people are poorly dressed for the blizzard that they're walking through. They're walking next to a church, and you kind of wonder, are they going towards the door to get into the church to find warmth, or did they just leave because they're like, they don't like us. We know they don't like us. Or, you know, how you can kind of, when you're afraid, when you feel like your resources and access to resources are scarce and far between, you can often make your situation worse by not trying, by just accepting. You're right. I don't deserve any better than this. I
Or
deserve
not
to be out here.
asking for help.
Yeah.
I
Hmm.
mean, it we're so ingrained, I think, in this society, you know, the whole bootstrap myth. You know, nobody
Mm.
themselves up by their bootstraps by themselves. Nobody does. You
Well,
know,
that's what the saying originally meant. It was like a joke. You cannot pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You know.
so yeah, I think, and again, the key word on this one is worry, which
Mm.
worry keeps you in that. That keeps you in that thing of not being able to ask for help because you're so tied up in your mind about, oh no, this is going to happen and I don't have enough this and I don't have enough that and oh my gosh, blah blah blah. Whereas if you could get out of that for a minute and just maybe make a pros and cons list, or go to, you know, get a Google search and look at things that could help you in your location, or whatever the problem is. If you could just step away from it for a minute, then you could see ways of moving out of it that, you know, constant worry won't let you do.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Well,
I
and
like that.
like in the as they're walking, it looks like one of the people is maybe barefoot and they're outside of a church. It's like, well, maybe go in, maybe they have a lost and found that they give away. Maybe
Yeah,
you can at least get some shoes. It's like you can't just decide to, you know, don't worry, be happy out of a situation, but you can stop what you're, you know,
yeah,
doing, change your perspective, or at least turn your head a little and be like, okay, well, I can't fix this big problem right now, but maybe if I start by fixing the little problems that are in front of me, eventually I'll find my way to fixing the big problem.
yeah.
Little baby steps.
Good
Baby
old baby.
steps.
Gonna say,
Little baby steps. So I was looking at the Five of Wands, and I don't really have much to say about the Five of Wands. I mean, I think you guys like covered all of it. But I did want to just say, like, I guess for all of the fives, even though they all touch on some aspect of challenges and conflicts, right? In the end, once you deal with and once you face these challenges and these conflicts, it's a matter of growth at the end, right? So we go through all of this, and at the end, there are lessons that you're learning from dealing with these challenges. And I think a bigger lesson to that is making sure that you're open to learning the lessons, like open to the perspective. So like, let's take the 5 of Swords, where, everything you guys were saying and the words that came to my mind were winning at any cost, and being able to look at this one particular maybe argument that you had with somebody and the mean things that you said to that person because you just felt like you had to win that argument and you had to come out on top and you wanted that person to turn around and go, yes, oh my God, you were right. How could I think differently? Looking back on that and saying, wow, like, acknowledging that you hurt somebody, right? Acknowledging that you got to the point where you allowed yourself to say mean things to another person and really doing it on purpose, kind of, and being able to look at that and go, okay, you know what? Wow, that was really bad. Like, that was dishonorable, right? You can take it as being dishonorable or having honor in how you deal with conflict with other people, especially verbally, right? You can have a really good argument with somebody, right? Or a really good discussion and get your point across without necessarily hurting the other person, but basically, it comes down to understanding like what you did, looking and being able to see what you did and how you can take that and now say, you know what? That wasn't in my best interest, right? Like you had said, Angie, I might have lost this relationship that could have proved to be very beneficial to me, right? It could have been like a 2 of Cups relationship that I could have had with this person. And now I've got nothing because I couldn't control my need to win all the time. And I think that's kind of like, we can see that in all of them, and like even in the 5 of Pentacles, when you were describing the card, which you did a beautiful job describing the Rider-Waite deck, I started to think too of like insecurity, and how, like, I know we say that the minors are things that occur in your daily life, and insecurities are kind of a big, huge life thing. But
Yeah.
being able to look at that and how do I see that in my everyday life? How am I feeling insecure? That in the card that you were looking at, Angie, the person didn't have shoes on, right? And you were saying, well, you could go into the church. They may have a lost and found. They may have donations. But what insecurity does that person have that's not enabling them to do that? Is it like that's sort of like pride, right? Like you might be hurting your pride by doing that, but what is your insecurity? And then these insecurities, if they happen, like if they affect you on a daily basis, can lead to complete isolation, right? Then again, you don't want to, do anything, go anywhere, or just take care of yourself. So being able to like go back and reflect on all of that, right? Maybe being able to go back and take that 4 of Swords and that 4 of Cups moment to reflect on the things that happen in your daily life, right, are important because you want to learn from your experiences. You want to learn these lessons so that when these conflicts come up again, which they will, because in our lives, we have a tendency to have challenges and conflicts. Yes, they repeat themselves. And sometimes we make the same mistakes over and over again.
That's right.
But taking that opportunity to like really look back and reflect, and that's why we do tarot, right? That's why we pull cards. That's why we're making this podcast, right? Is to show how the tarot is a tool for reflection. It's a reminder that in order for us to live our best life, we need to be able to reflect. We need to be able to accept all of the things that are going to come up that we don't like, that we don't want to hear.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, totally. There's like an opportunity for transformation in every 5 card is kind of how I see it. And,
Yeah.
the Hierophant being the 5 in the Major Arcana, that's also transformative. If you are a student under a Hierophant, you are transforming from one thing into another. You're getting the education. And, in the minors, you've got this opportunity with the wands. Are you going to be patient and learn to, prioritize and wait your turn? And in the 5s, like you were saying, are you going to use all of the force that you can, everything at your disposal, just to really kick someone's ass in a way that is going to make you look like a bully? you know and
I think
sometimes you have to say hard no, 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 and then you do feel good when whoever is picking on you goes away. I'm not saying that you should, I'm not one of those never get angry, never be angry kind of people. But
yeah.
and in the 5s, it's like you said, there's a lot of opportunity for transformation there, to kind of set your pride aside and say, hey, I'm having a hard time. Could somebody give me a hand here?
Yeah, absolutely. And when you pull the cards for yourself, like really asking yourself those questions, like digging in even deeper into, where in this, if you take the 5 of Swords, where in this scenario am I being the one who's being, mean, or that I am acting in an ugly way? Where in that am I? Where am I? What person in that picture, right? Because the 5 of Swords generally has at least 3 people in many of the decks that I've seen. So which person, are you in all of
Yeah.
that too, right? That's another way to look at it. You don't always have to be the person who is hurting other people. You could literally be the person who's being hurt.
Right.
The person who is
Yeah,
not standing up for themselves, right? The
Mhm.
person who's allowing another person to treat you that way. So depending on who you are, I think determines what actions you take next, as far as when you're reflecting and learning.
Yeah,
So
and in the cups, about being grieving with that picture of the cups, how the person just can't move on from what they've lost. You have to make that decision of when you're going to pick up your 2 full cups, and you're always going to have these empty cups with you. You pick them up and you take them with you. They're going to be there when you sit down again, and it's one of those things that I think is very well depicted. Of you will keep coming back to this situation again and again in your heart. But also you have these other things in your life that are good and full and true, and you can keep moving. Like I've never thought of this as a just forget about that. Walk away from it. You can't do that when you're really hurt, or have suffered a great emotional loss. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. And it's you may carry that grief and that loss with you for the rest of your life, but focusing on the very negative part of it is really not going to get you. And nobody is ever
Mhm.
saying that you must forget, like you were saying, Angie.
Yeah.
But why don't we try not focusing so much on the negative part? Why don't we not focus so much on the regret or the disappointment, and all of those negative feelings? Let's try to kind of like sit with it, and then just say, okay, I've experienced it, I've dealt with it, but I need to move on. If
Mhm.
I can't continue to grow, and I can't continue to live my best life if I cannot just say, okay, I'm going to just put it to the side right now. It's there. I'm not ignoring it, but I am not going to allow it to direct how I'm feeling and isolate me, and all of that. I'm going to allow it to now let me walk over that bridge, right? So that I can get to my home, maybe that I can get to my, 4 of Wands there with my community of people who love me and whom I share all this stuff with. Those are the people I want to be with. Those are the people that are going to help me deal with the loss and the grief. It's not something that has to be done on your own.
So Angie, pick a 4 and a 5.
Me pick a 4 and a 5?
4 and a 5 that you like.
that I like.
Want.
I like the Four of Cups and the Five of Wands.
Okay, Kate, pick a 4 and a 5.
Like, you're putting me on the spot here, man. Let me see. If I'm going to look at my cards, I really like the Four of Swords. And if I'm looking at the other cards that I have here, goodness gracious, I don't know. I'm going to go with the Five of Cups.
Okay, and I'm gonna pick the 4 of Pentacles and the 5 of Swords. So now I'm gonna put all these cards back in my deck. You guys shuffle your decks, draw a card to help clarify each one, and then we'll go through that.
What do you mean to clarify each card?
No, just the two cards that you pulled.
Right.
Pull a card for each one of those cards to help with that or whatever.
I love this impromptu card pulling
Yeah, I'm like,
thing.
well, we're in a tarot. We got to pull some cards.
Heck yeah.
Oh,
So I just
thank you, Linda.
shuffle my the remaining 4s and 5s back into the deck so I don't sabotage myself. And if you have them turned over, turn it fine. I'm going to turn mine over after I lay out both of them.
Okay, well, I got the Ace of Wands to go with the Four of Cups.
Okay.
And the Page of Pentacles to go with the Five of Wands.
Nice.
So I think when it comes to Four of Cupsing in my life, I need to only pick up new cups that have cool ideas in them that I'm interested in exploring. I have a lot that I've already got my hands pretty full emotionally, I feel like. But there is more that I need to be doing in my life, not just because I have to, but because it's good for me. It's good for me to do new things and to keep to have plans and to do stuff and to not just sit there and just hope everything stays the same forever, you know?
Right.
And then with the Five of Wands and the Page of Pentacles, I kind of like how these two situations work together, right? Because the Page of Pentacles is a little more like, settle down, weirdo. with all the Five of Wands, you know, swinging all these ideas, like you should do this and do that and do the other thing and all of these things, and you know, you should be worried about all of these things all of the time and very upset and always, you know, a person that my husband used to work with had a saying when it came to making plans to do things: is this progress or is it just motion? So the Page of Pentacles says, I would like to make progress, and you idiots are just standing around waving things willy-nilly and, you know, whapping each other. So I think the Ace of Wands and the Page of Pentacles tell me to strive for balance between, you know, kind of inertia and my Okay, I think that's enough out of me for today.
You cracked me up. I love that question. Is it progress or motion? And when you said it, I looked at my first cards and I was like, oh, that's the answer right there. That's the lesson that I'm getting, because I chose the Four of Swords and then I pulled the Five of Wands for the Four of Swords. And to me, that's what it says, right? It says, when you're in this, and conflict for the Five of Wands is not necessarily meaning such a negative thing. It can just be internal, right? For you yourself, you have ideas that are conflicting and fighting with one another in your head. And I think, Linda, you made a really good analogy with the Five of Wands. I don't know if it was in a previous episode that we did, or in the symposium, or in one of our discussions, where you mentioned that the Five of Wands, each person was a character, and their motions of using the wands and in battle were pre-planned, almost like you watch a movie and you have to have the scene, and they show everybody the movements that you're going to make, and that
Yeah.
it's like planned.
Choreography.
And yes, that's it. And that's what I was thinking. So it's like sometimes I have this battle going on in my head with, some ideas that I might have, how I want to do something, the planning stage. And now it's like, am I making progress with this way of planning, or, is it just all this woo stuff going on?
Yeah.
And then the Four of Swords comes in and says, hey, you need to take a break. You need to like rest. You need to maybe stop thinking about it for a little while. And you need to gain some more mental clarity and then go back and approach the situation again. So I love that. Thank you for mentioning that. And then the second one, which I'm going to maybe need your guys' help on, is, so I mentioned the Five of Cups, and then I got the Knight of Wands. And the first thing that came to my mind was, what is it that I am grieving or refusing to let go? Like, what feeling am I refusing to let go? And the Knight of Wands coming in and encouraging me to take action on doing something about it, right? Like to do something creative to kind of help redirect my emotions from something that's not helping me right now. And how can I use some of this creative energy that I have and taking action to kind of help me, whether it's because I do know. What?
Dance it.
I still didn't hear you.
Dance it out.
Oh, dance it out.
Oh,
I
the
was going
Knight
to
of
say
Wands.
more of like writing poetry, because when I tend to get very Five of Cups, I get like a lot of emotions and just things come to my mind, and I will write poetry. So I write my best poetry when I'm feeling my worst. I write my best poetry when I am like to the point where I'm just down
Yeah.
on myself all the time. I create such great poetry, and maybe that's what the card is saying. Find some kind of creative outlet to kind of like help you with being able to feel better.
The Knight of Wands is just the Knight of Wands and the Knight of Swords are both, to me, just very cards just full of movement, just full of movement. And that's why I said dance it out, because like you can put on music in your house and dance like nobody's watching, because nobody is watching, versus going to a class somewhere, yoga class or whatever. You can just do however you want to do, but it's that motion, it's that movement. When we're in the Five of Cups, disappointment, defeated kind of mode, we want to retreat to the couch, we want to retreat to the bed, we want to curl up, and not move. And moving, getting that blood flowing, getting more oxygen to your brain can give you just doing that can give you inspiration on how to literally move forward out of those emotions.
Absolutely. And it
Yeah, and I
reminds
think
me of a thing that I learned in my my recovery support groups. And it was change a thought, move a muscle, right? Or was it move a muscle, change a thought? I think it was move a muscle, change a thought. And it's that same philosophy, like get up and move and do something, and then that will help you change your thinking. So yeah.
And it's hard to do when you're in a Five of Cups, kind of, because that's a very hard thing, very hard, heavy thing to struggle out from underneath. But I think the Knight of Wands is there to remind you that beauty can come from grief. You've written beautiful poetry when you're very sad. And I know that because of some of the things I've experienced, I'm a trusted friend to people who have needed someone to hold their hand in the fucking dark.
Yeah.
And I can do that.
Yeah. And that's a beautiful thing, because not everybody can, not everybody can. So that is a beautiful thing. All right, Linda, what'd you pull?
Well, it's very interesting. So I went with the Five of Swords, and I pulled the Hierophant, also a 5.
Ooh.
Which I've been, since our last thing, I've been doing a lot of reading and looking at the Hierophant too, because I've kind of been looking at this card in a different way. And I think that the question the Hierophant asks the Five of Swords is, how did you just give away your power? Because you might have won, but because you maybe did something unethical or something that was just so over the top that anyone who was in that battle with you is now going to look at you in a completely different way, which may or may not be favorable, that you might have shot yourself in the foot. And so I think the Hierophant here is saying, not so much pick your battles, but be very cautious or be very aware of how you fight. You know, how you, are you going below the belt? Are you, you know, literally hamstringing somebody with your words? Are you, you know, using underhanded tactics? Are you, or are you standing up and calling on the truth? The swords being, you know, with mental clarity and all that, saying, I'm fighting this battle because I believe this and I'm standing up for what I believe. And so I think the Hierophant really informs the Five of Swords on this particular thing. So
That
very
was
interesting.
great, Linda.
Yeah, it's like
That was great.
telling you to stand up for something instead of always like standing against, you know, something. Like
Right.
this, I'm going to be this is who I am, and I am this strongly. Don't come for me, because
Right.
I'm going to kick your butt if you do.
That's,
But
no, I mean, people might not like it, but you
Mhm.
haven't impugned anybody's reputation. You haven't said anything bad. You're just saying, this is what I'm standing for. If you don't like it, watch out.
Mhm.
You know,
Keep
There's an
walking,
art
buddy.
to it. There's an art to expressing how you feel and what you want and what you think in a way that conveys that message strongly to another person, but that does not insult that person, disrespect that person, as much as you may want to do that because you
right,
can be very angry. But there,
right.
you know, there's an art to communication, you
Oh,
know, and I love, Linda, that you're looking at that going, okay, you know, I want to make sure that I stand in my power, but do so in a way that is not going to dishonor me as I am doing it. And I think that's a beautiful thing.
right. And it's about, and that's exactly right. You're not going to dishonor yourself. You
Yeah.
know, be true. And so the four, for the Four of Pentacles, I pulled the Knight of Pentacles. So it's interesting when I look at them sitting side by side. So you got the guy sitting on the bench with his feet and hands and head with the pentacles, and then the knight's on his horse and he's holding a pentacle and he's looking out sort of over a landscape. So to me, it looks like the knight is about to go on a quest. And when you go on a quest, you're going to have to use some resources, but you're also going to have to be, you know, mindful of those resources, because you have to have enough to last you through the quest, which you may not know how long it's going to be. So I think that this is interesting to say that sometimes you have to use your resources to go further. But again, it's not, you don't have to be frivolous. You know, you can plan, you can say, for instance, if you want to take a trip, you can stay in, you know, Airbnbs versus fancy hotels. You can shop at a grocery store and pick up a few things versus going to restaurants. You could, you know, that's just very practical, a very practical subject. But, you know, anything like that, you know, you can manage your resources such that you can achieve the goal that you want without being frivolous and without being too much of a miser or a hoarder, so that you don't have enough to finish what you need to do. So
Yeah, that was great. Absolutely. You know, it's like finding that balance of holding on too much or using it, you know,
yeah,
and that's like an art because
yeah,
that's not
Mm,
that's not an easy thing to do at all. Right.
how much or how little you have, it's not an easy thing to do.
And I
that's
think
right.
too, like if you tie that into the Hierophant, and I love to look at the Hierophant as far as your beliefs, like what you value and what you believe to be important. And that does come into play when you're talking about how am I going to utilize my resources, right, to go out on this journey, and what you value and what you believe is going to reflect how much of those resources you use, right? So, understanding too what you value, like what you want to spend those resources on, how
Right.
you want to use them, what you want to use them for is important too, right? I mean, there's like a much bigger picture, and the Hierophant is a major arcana, right? So that's going to be more of a life lesson. That's more of an overarching theme that you kind of work on
Yeah.
for your life, and then what you were talking about with those two, well, the one minor and then you have a court card, those are how can I work on this overarching theme on a daily basis,
Yeah.
and how can I, learn, from that,
Definitely.
and making mistakes is good, right? Because that's how we learn. You make the
Absolutely.
mistakes and that's how you learn.
We can
This was
hope.
this was so
I hope so. Yes. Oh my God, this was awesome. I honestly, and I'm going to say this, and I said this in one of our other episodes, I didn't really think that we were going to have this much to talk about with the 4 and 5s, but it wound up being a very, very insightful conversation. And I picked up a lot, I kind of like really start to think about those cards in a different lens,
yeah.
so thank you to both of you for that. And I really hope that our listeners enjoyed it. And I hope that we gave them some really good insights and things to think about. And just again, stressing the fact of using these cards, as a means to reflect and grow. Right. And hopefully we're giving you some tools or some ways to enable you to do that. So thank you to our listeners for joining us today. And thank you, Angie, and thank you, Linda, for always being there. And I love our 3 of Cups little logo on our Instagram, which I
Oh
think is
yeah, you can
awesome.
follow us now at tarot_trio on Instagram.
Yes,
And
and
it'll be in the show notes too.
it will be in the
someday.
show notes as well. Yes. And very soon, actually, by the time this episode comes out, we probably will have our YouTube.
Oh, we do have the YouTube up.
Oh, there you
We've got
go.
the first 3 episodes on there now.
Yep.
So
And
Sweet.
just so that our listeners are aware, it's an audio YouTube. You will not be
yeah.
seeing our beautiful faces on the
Maybe
video.
someday though. We could do that someday. We could
But,
just do a little video someday.
We could.
Be fine.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you again, ladies, for a wonderful conversation.
Join us next time when we discuss the lovers.
Oh, yeah, that's going to be a juicy one, right, Linda?
Maybe not. It's not my favorite part.